You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Welcome back. I'm Christine Bentley in studio with Sharon Caddy, and joining us now are two members of a very special Canadian team selected for the inaugural Geneva Challenge on Women Empowerment hosted by the UN. So welcome to Faye Simmonds from U of T and Amrita Kumar-Ratta of McGill.
Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So the challenge has already taken place. So where did you place?
We actually placed third out of the three global teams that were chosen to come to Geneva, so that was pretty exciting.
That is exciting. Good for you guys.
But you were chosen out of how many teams?
There were over 40 teams that entered the contest, and there was 3 that made it into the finals.
So how does one get selected for this?
Yeah, what's the process to reach where you got?
Well, I guess we found out about it through social media, as a lot of things, we found out about a lot of things nowadays. There was a posting that kind of went through our school. Both of us actually were graduate students at the Monk School of Global Affairs at the University of Toronto. So we found about it through that. And I put a posting on Facebook about it, and that's how it all spread.
The application criteria, though, it looks at the rigorousness of your analysis. It looks at the creativity of your response. It looks at any innovative contributions you make in terms of policy or process, idea, technology, anything to that effect. And it looks at the overall proposal that you put forward.
So what exactly was the proposal they were asking for?
So this was the inaugural competition, and the theme of this year's was women empowerment. So basically you had to take a look at one issue regarding a challenge to empowering women on a global scale, and then come up with a solution for how you might tackle that in an innovative and creative way.
So
what did you come up with?
What did we come up with? Well, it was quite a process deciding, what issue to tackle because, women empowerment is such a broad topic, and there's so many directions that you can go underneath that topic. So after a lot of discussion and brainstorming, we finally came to the topic of migrant workers, particularly domestic workers, and we focused on Indonesia.
Wow. Now, so how did you arrive at that though? Like, is it through people you met, things you read, or was it things you learned and then met people?
Well, I think the way the process worked was, so there were 5 of us, and each of us have a diverse range of experiences and interests. So we all we started with a brainstorming activity where we all wrote down on Post-its the kinds of issues that we were interested in, the kinds of issues that we want to be tackling, and then we categorized them by issue area, and then through all of that we kind of narrowed down, which issues would be the most interesting for people, which issues or issue areas people have the most interest and experience in, but also which issues would be the most feasible in terms of tackling for a project like this.
So since we're not in Geneva, but we're here, why don't you tell our listeners exactly about the problem, how you untangled the sorts of struggles that Indonesian female migrant workers face, and what your proposed solution was?
So the problem as we identified it was that we looked specifically at migrant workers moving from East Java to Saudi Arabia, and they suffer a lot of abuses when they go abroad. There's a lot of tales of violence, sexual assault, underpayment of wages, even torture. There's a lot of issue areas that accompany their movement to Saudi Arabia. But also there's a lot of issues when they come back home. They can have problems reintegrating back into the community, problems with their spouses if they have one. If they had young children when they left, they might forget them. So what we did was we took a look at how we could tackle that, not just for the women themselves, but also on a community level, because they need to be supported on this community level in order for systemic change to occur. So we developed a resource center, and this resource center provides information and training so that the women have more knowledge and know where they can go and what they can do in order to create a better life for themselves, in order to tackle a lot of these problems on their own. But it also opens the narrative so that the community can engage in this, and so that the husbands, the children, the spouses, the family members writ large can assist in this process to ensure that women feel supported at all stages of the migration.
Now, Amrita, you did mention that you felt this was innovative.
Yeah.
And you want and so tell us, because we're maybe not aware of all the initiatives going on globally for women.
So I think where we came from in terms of determining the innovativeness of our approach was really stressing the fact that our approach, or the project that we propose, really expands the narrative, expands the definition of empowerment. Because as it stands right now, a lot of initiatives that have to do with women empowerment really look at what women can do to empower themselves. You know, support groups, training centers, training programs, all sorts of different things that really focus on, you know, in the case of migrant workers, how those migrant workers should best prepare for going abroad, how they should deal with exploitation, what legal channels they have, all those sorts of things. But there's nothing there that really talks about what role the community plays in that empowerment, what role men, children, other family members play in empowering women. So that's really the direction that we wanted to take it in.
So it truly is just, it's a story of support and how we managed to build that support.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about what it was like to go to Geneva. I mean, you must have been somewhat intimidated, because you're a pretty special group.
Yeah, it definitely was a little bit intimidating. We were competing against a team from the UK and one from Colombia as well, and so when you draw from this global subset of people, you really realize like how many strong ideas are there out there, and like how you compare against other people. And so there's a lot of anxiousness, a lot of nervousness. We didn't even have a full 24 hours to prepare in Geneva before we went, but overall it was really exciting.
But there was pre-departure training, I understand.
I guess you could tackle that in two ways. Pre-departure training for our own team, like we did a lot of presentation skills. We created the PowerPoint, we practiced it, and it did all those sorts of things. But it's funny you should say pre-departure training, because in our proposal, that's one of the issue areas that we addressed, and making sure that the women that leave from Indonesia to Saudi Arabia have all the training that they need to make their lives a lot easier while abroad and when they come back.
So I'm curious, how long did it take you, your team, to put this together, to do the research, from the time that you decided to do it? How did you pick team members? Like, how did that work?
Well, as I started mentioning before, this was something that a lot of us had heard through our being a part of the Monk School of Global Affairs. And so when I saw this posting, I mean, a lot of us had heard about it already, but I was very, very interested in applying for it and getting a team of people together. So what I did was I just posted the selection criteria, the call for the competition on Facebook, and just said, you know, whoever responds, please, if you're a graduate student, that's all that really counts right now. You know, hit me up with your responses. And so I got a range of responses from both my graduate school, but also outside of that. And that's how the team was formed. And it's interesting that I would say out of 5 members, 4 of us ended up being affiliated in some way with the Monk School of Global Affairs. And then our last teammate was actually a high school peer of mine.
Really?
Yeah, who I hadn't heard from in a while, but he expressed his interest, and he was from from Western University. So that's how the team got formed.
So this is almost like a really high-level Amazing Race. I mean, when you go to Geneva, who were you presenting to? Who was in that amazing group of people?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Well, I guess it was a range of people. So the high patron of the challenge was none other than Kofi Annan. So that was both intimidating that he was going to be there, but also really exciting. As well as other students from the Institute, from the Graduate Institute in Geneva, some professors, members of the community. So there was a range of people. There was actually, I should say, the presentation and the award ceremony were 2 different events. So the presentation took place in a smaller room in front of a jury panel comprised of 5 people, making up, you know, coming from a range of different expertise levels. so a couple of professors, a few practitioners from the UN, and then the attendees were people from the community. And then the award ceremony was made up of more high-profile people, I guess you can say.
What a breathtaking experience.
Well, we hope that you two will stay with us over the break because we'd like to hear about the two other teams, what their ideas were, because it is a competition, but still you're the best of the best. And I, as an older person, would like to know what these bright young minds are bringing to the table and what's in the future for this channel. So this is what she said, and we'll be right back after this very short break.
We are back. So glad to have you along today on this wonderful Wednesday. Joining us in studio, two young ladies who were part of our Canadian team at the Geneva Challenge, Faye Simmonds and Amrita Kumar-Ratta. And ladies, we were talking a little about your experiences going to Geneva, to the UN for this presentation. Now, the other two teams that were finalists, tell us a little about where they were from and what their projects were.
So the two teams, one was from Colombia, the Universidad de los Andes, and the other one was from the University of Reading in the UK. The Colombian team came first, and what their project was centered on was moving from a stigma to a human rights and a health approach in sex workers within Colombia. So they were using photography to put cameras and skills to use these cameras into the hands of sex workers within Colombia, and they were portraying what they think that their life is like, or like showing the world what their life is like, and then they're going to display these photographs throughout the city in large form, and it was trying to move away from the stigma that's attached to their lives within Colombia to show people, you know, these are people just like your mothers, your daughters, your sisters, your friends. These are people that you should really be looking at and understanding a lot more instead of just creating stigma around it. The University of Reading team, they did what was called Market Matchup, and it was looking at putting mobile app technology into the hands of rural farmers in different areas of Africa so that they could match their crop to buyers, because there's middlemen that often reap a lot of the rewards from the profits in the transaction between the growers and the buyers. And it means that the people who are actually growing the food receive very little of the funds from their produce. And so it was trying to match up buyers to sellers to ensure that the women, mostly, who were working in the agricultural fields, were getting a living wage for their work.
Well, these are all like really top of mind news. We hear about these stories in the news. We hear about these are really ongoing issues that were being tackled by all of these groups. That's so wonderful.
Now, when the decision was handed down, I understand that they explained why you were third.
Yep. So one of the reasons, I guess, how the award was categorized or laid out was that the Colombian team, had a very, very interesting approach. And Faye mentioned this, that they were shifting from, traditional ideas about what education is in terms of who's educating who about stigma and reversing that. So instead of, anthropologists or public health workers or social workers coming in to a brothel or, a place where you have a lot of people who are sex workers and who are seeking shelter coming in and talking to these sex workers about what their rights are, or about how to practice safe sex, or how to be healthy generally. You had that reversed. So by giving these women cameras and allowing them to display themselves in the public forum, these sex workers were actually educating the public about stigma and about what is sex and what is work.
That's truly an innovative approach. It really is.
And so that's the reason why the Colombian team, rightly so, came first. And also because these Colombian students also had a very personal relationship with the organization, with a particular organization that they were working with. And so they were going to use the project project, the money that was given by the fund to fund their project as well as fund other projects within that organization. So the money was really, we knew where the money was going,
Yes.
and so that was one of the reasons why they came in first. And similarly, Market Matchup also had a very sort of a bottom-up approach, and some of the other team members had some connections with rural farmers and sub-Saharan Africa. So there was a sense of, we know who's going to be working on this project and who is going to be affected by it. So that was sort of the reason, or the ordering of the teams in that sense.
So when you were there, what kind of reception did you get from other people? Besides Kofi Annan, were you exposed to a lot of idea seekers, people who are influencers?
Well, for the award ceremony, there was like a packed audience. I'd say like maybe 500 people there. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a lot of interest in it. In terms of people like personally approaching us, we didn't have, unfortunately, that much opportunity to do so. Afterwards, the reception was mostly just like the actual contestants as well as some of the high-profile guests that were there. So I'm not sure how much people would have wanted to come up and talk to us, but unfortunately, there wasn't really ample time to do that. That might change in years to come. This was the inaugural event, so there's still a few kinks that they're working out, and I hope that this transmission of ideas can be extended further than it was already. But definitely there was interest and support from the audience members who came and wanted to see these award ceremonies, wanted to see the ideas.
Mm-hmm. And if I could just add something to that, I think also the selection of jury panelists was quite broad and there was quite a range of skill and experience within the jury panel itself. So I think just the fact that we were able to present to 5 really knowledgeable and really experienced people within the field also gives us a leg up in terms of who we can approach in the future.
Certainly.
So as 2 young women who are very bright and very motivated, what do you personally feel about these awards and how important they are? Or this challenge, rather. Sorry. I mean, just the fact that all these people are being invited to come and...
Well, I think it's indicative that we're starting to recognize more and more that these are issues we need to tackle, that we need to have like a broader base of people thinking about it, and that we need to start talking about it a lot more, because great ideas, you were mentioning earlier, like you really need to have sort of a propelling motion, like you build off of each other, and so that's definitely a big part of how we're going to move forward with that in the future. And I think that people are starting to recognize that this is something that we need to do and something that is going to be beneficial for everybody in the long run, and so we should be looking at it head on right now. But
what about the fact that you're young? You don't have a track record of 20 years of innovation and building a company. You're young, bright minds, and the fact that you were asked to contribute, what does that mean to you, or what does that say about the world?
Well, I think it's important that, I think it says something about, I mean, as Faye said, there's an importance to recognizing the ideas that come out of young students, people that have recently graduated or who have had a range of experience without necessarily having the experience of founding a company or having 20 years of innovation in their belt. I think the fact that we were invited to a challenge like this, the fact that a challenge like this even was founded, says something about the increased recognition that there is towards young scholarship and young innovators. Though I don't think by any means we're where we should be, for the future, but I think we're getting there.
Now, you mentioned your graduate students. Give us a little background, and we know what you've done with the challenge, but what are your fields of study, and what are you doing with it right now?
Faye, you want to start?
Sure. Okay, so we both were in a graduate program for global affairs, which is sort of like political science mixed with business, mixed with international relations. It's pretty broad. We all came from different backgrounds. Mine is in sociology and psychology. And we both graduated in June as well, so we've kind of gone off on our own adventures now. I'm currently looking for employment. I'm hoping for something in like international development. I have had like a few interviews to that effect, so I'm hoping to be able to make a mark on the world continuing to go forward. Amrita, if you want to talk about yourself.
Yeah, so as Faye mentioned, we both graduated from the Master of Global Affairs program at the University of Toronto. Prior to that, I have my undergraduate experiences in international development and world religions from McGill. And now I have been blessed with the opportunity to contribute as the lead of a project that's being funded by the region of Peel. So I'm leading the first ever municipal charter of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Canada, which is going to be throughout Brampton, Caledon, and Mississauga. So it's a pretty big task, but I'm excited, and that's an 18-month contract. So that's what I'm doing right now, and going forward after the contract, I hope to be looking towards PhD programs.
Well, I do believe that you two have pretty impeccable resumes, especially with this challenge on your resume. It's pretty formidable. I do believe we have some pretty bright futures ahead here, eh, Christine?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm in awe. I'm humbled. We're all humbled.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much for coming in and joining us today. It's a pleasure, and we are so proud of you. We are so very proud of what you did with this challenge and the bright futures you have in store. All the best to both of you.
And
Well,
we'll
thank
be
you so
watching
much.
next year to find out who's going to be,
I
if we
know.
have any more, because you were the only Canadian team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yep.
So we'll see if we can produce another stellar team like this one for the challenge next year.
Well, actually, next year's theme is exactly on the project kind of topic that our project was based on. It's all about migration and development. So who knows?
Well, maybe you'll go back.
Maybe it's a
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.